how do you make difficult conversations easy with your spouse without the drama that so many times surrounds couples when they're having these deeper conversations? How do you do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this episode as we dive into ways that can be made possible. So stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Now, this is one of the things that I find many couples tend to struggle with. They have these topics, these things they want to talk about, and somehow they will find that there is a resistance from one or the other in the marriage. And what I've heard, as many couples that have come to me, have spoken to me about this very topic, this very issue, is that when they try to bring these, look for ways to have this conversation, they get dismissed. It's as if we just don't have the time. Let's not talk about that. We don't need to even have that conversation. And on it goes, right? But the person that wants to have that difficult conversation, what tends to happen is he or she begins to drift away and shut down and come to this conclusion that, okay, you know what? I guess we won't talk about things that matters to our marriage. And sometimes what this does, it sets up for distancing in the relationship and resentment and anger. And sometimes it drives a person to vices, for example, to drinking. It could be using drugs, prescribed or otherwise. And sometimes it to other relationships because they're looking for that person that they can have these deep conversations with or difficult conversations with. And they feel it has to go somewhere. So the question becomes, how do you do that? And maybe you said, Kingsley, I've tried. It's not for lack of trying, but I want you to, with this, as you listen to this episode, maybe you, in trying, have not considered some of the things we'll be discussing in this episode. So you may be the one that say things like this, where I've tried, like you've heard, you'll hear right now as you listen to this. It's basically reasons why we have this podcast. And maybe you're saying, that's me. I've tried, but it hasn't worked out. Well, stay tuned because I'm going to help you with that right after this.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Now, we are going to then look at ways to make that possible, make that conversation easy. So let us begin then by looking at what is, why should we have difficult conversations? Why is that so important? Well, it's important because it's going to help the relationship to become, and you'll see towards the end of this episode, become deeper. A deeper connection is formed. It creates intimacy and trust. It allows for deeper understanding. It will help you resolve conflicts and strengthen relationship. He said, Kingsley, well, wait a minute. The thing that it tends to do for us, it drives us apart. We fight more, we argue more. And so when you say it resolves conflict, for us, it seems to create more conflict. Or maybe, as you see in this episode, or listen and hear in this episode, possibly, and I'm not pointing fingers here and saying, there's one way right or the other, but I do know some more effective ways So what you're going to hear in this episode is the more effective ways to make this happen so you can promote your emotional well-being and reduce stress and do have stronger relationships and so our stronger marriage. So while it's not easy, it is crucial for building trust and intimacy in your relationship, right? So what's going to happen is that you're going to learn and discover in this episode that when you openly communicate your thoughts and your feelings to your spouse, you're going to gain a deeper understanding of him or her and their perspective, what it is they've been thinking about the matter, or what are their thoughts about the matter as you present that and work together to resolve the conflicts and challenges. Okay? So what eventually happens is it ends up leading you to a healthier emotional environment. It reduces stress for both of you. And that's why I think it's so important to have these difficult conversations. Now, many times the difficult conversations are around things like finances or spending. So one person might be more of a spender and the other more of a saver. And there's a reason, because there's a relationship with money. And so that does play out as well. It could be parenting situation. It could be just differences of opinion on certain things. And maybe something that happened where one party was hurt in a situation and they want to talk about that. They want to bring it up so it doesn't happen again. It could be where it happens with in-laws, or it could be a disrespectful issue in the public sphere. So it could be a number of things, and you feel you need to talk about that. So one of the first things you want to do to have these difficult conversations is to choose the right time and place. The right time and place. This is very important. You're going to hear me mention and refer back to this again throughout this episode, because I think this is very, very critical for the safety of the relationship and for the health of the relationship. So what you want to do is be able to pick a calm and neutral moment when both of you can, you feel like you're well rested, you're free from distractions. There's not some kind of, issues that happened recently. And so you're still trying to get over that, right? So you want to create what I call a safe emotional space, and where you set up parameters, or I would call those rules of engagement, where you decide what should happen in that space when you do create this neutral moment. And so in that regards, you're going to be able then to create, again, what should happen and what should not happen in that time when you do come together to have these conversations, right? And you want to be able to be calm about it and be, very, use a lot of breathing. As I would say earlier, you may want to just come in calm as possible in that moment. And what you're going to do is be able to feel that you can express yourself, and your partner, your husband, your wife will be able to receive what it is you have to say. So the first thing is to create the right time and place. I love what Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes, have said. He's talking about the fact that there is a time for everything under the sun. So he's again reinforcing the idea there's a right time. And I would just say here, let me just try to take that back, because I don't want to get in this right, wrong kind of thing. I would just say there is a helpful and a less helpful way to have these conversations, right? There's a helpful and a less helpful way to approach these conversations. And one of the helpful ways is what I want to now mention to you. So after you've set up this safe space, you want to be able to use I statements. So I statements, start with I statements. I statements is simply talking about what it is you're experiencing, what you've experienced, right? It's your own personal experience, and you're going to take responsibility for your own feelings and your own thoughts. Because what happens most times in these times, couples, where they get into trouble, is that they begin to blame, right? And use you. For example, you did that. You caused that. You are the one that made me do X, Y, Z. And so what the person here is blame, they hear attack, they hear accusations, and all those things are going to create people to go into self-defense posture. they're going to go, you probably have experienced that yourself where you become very defensive. Who would not become defensive if they are on the receiving end of what they would call an attack or accusations? Now, it doesn't mean the person didn't have something to do with what has happened. They might be very guilty. They may be the one that have done the deed, the act. But even though that's true, using I statements, what you're simply saying is how you feel rather than blaming your partner for what is happening. So you are responsible for how you feel and how you think. That's what you are responsible for. I say many times to whether in my coaching or my counseling, I would say to my clients, I said, here is two things I want you to remind yourself of. And that is, number one, you are responsible for your behavior. You are responsible for your behavior. No matter what anybody else does, you are responsible for your behavior. And secondly, you're responsible for your reaction or your response to the behavior of another person. You're responsible for your behavior, your reaction, your response to the behavior of someone else. So when people say, you make me do this and you make me do that, if you hadn't done, no. I know it's easy to say that, but you are responsible for your own behavior. It doesn't matter what anybody else does. You have to start with what have been your behavior, or how did you respond to whatever that person did? Because many times you've heard this, you may have heard this yourself, where it says two wrongs does not make a right, or do not make a right, right? Two wrongs do not make a right. And that is a true statement. I love what the Bible said in the book of Romans. It says, do not return evil for evil. You don't overcome evil by doing, you don't overcome evil by doing evil. The Bible went on to say, you overcome evil by doing good. So when you are wanting to fix something, you don't go about the reactive way. You respond, and I statements allow you to respond appropriately, right? So you're looking for what it is you're feeling or thinking and taking responsibility for that, and avoid accusatory languages like you always or you never. Those kind of things are the absolutes, and a person can always point to where they say, hey, I remember when I did X, Y, Z, and you can't refute because you know it's true. So when you use the word always and you never, you lock yourself into that. So I statements are very critical. The next thing I want to add is practice active listening. So many people will tell you that they are good listeners. Maybe you would say to yourself or to your spouse, I'm a good listener. The question is, who judges that? Who determines that, right? You can't be the one who determines whether or not you're a good listener or not, because you're the one who needs to be listened to, and the person who's listening to you is the one determined. You are the one who's going to be listening to what someone else says, and the person who's speaking to you is the one who determines whether you're a good listener or not, because you are not listening when you are on your phone while the person is speaking to you. You're not listening if you're distracted by watching television while the person is speaking to you. You're not listening by doing something, fidgeting and doing whatever it is if the person is speaking to you. That is not active listening. Active listening requires you to pay close attention to your partner's words and nonverbal cues. You're listening to what they're saying and what they're not saying, because you want to be able to get the full effect of what it is they're saying at that moment. Active listening requires you to not interrupt your partner and somehow think like you're going to finish their sentence and you know what they're thinking, you know what they were going to say. No, you don't. You don't. I was speaking on a panel recently, and I raised this in the audience. I said to the audience, whenever you're in this situation as a couple, what I tell couples when they say, oh, I know how he's going to finish his sentence, I know what he was going to say. I said, no, you don't. So I do. We've been married for a long time, so I do know what they're going to say. I'm saying, no, you don't. What you're telling me is that you're saying to me about your husband or your wife is that they have not grown since the last few years. They have not grown, because if they've grown, they shouldn't be at a different stage in their lives than they were then. And so you're simply saying they have remained the same. And I have a hard time thinking and believing that. So it's important to allow the person and be respectful to allow them to finish their sentence. Allow them to formulate and express their thoughts, right? So you want to be able then to acknowledge what you heard And then you summarize that in your own words so that the person can confirm that you heard them well and that is what they were trying to say to you. And you also give them a chance to go back to the drawing board and possibly rethink about what they were saying, because they may have thought they communicated well when truly they did not. So you're going to pay close attention to their words, both the verbal and nonverbal. Like I mentioned, avoid interrupting and avoid trying to formulate your own response while they're talking and your mind is going. You can't wait to jump in and you never even acknowledge them, but you just went boom by beginning to refute and dispute or argue with them about what they have just said. That is not active listening, right? The next thing is to focus on the problem, right? Focus on problem solving, not blaming. Focus on problem solving, not blame. Too many times I find couples in these situations, what they end up doing is they end up using, going back to the idea of the I statements, right? The reason why it's so important, when they use you statement, they feel blame. So what you're trying to do here is, how can you, even though one person might be guilty of what it is you're talking to them about, and it's very obvious, and I'm not here going to refute and somehow let them off the hook and say they should never take responsibility and accountability for their actions. Yes, they should. However, if you're going to work constructively and productively on an issue and have this difficult conversation, you must be able to create a space whereby you can both you both can team up together and work to a solution. So when you focus on the problem solving, right, I would say also solution focused, then you're going to shift away from the blame. And so you're going to together brainstorm potential solutions for the issue at hand. You're going to collaborate on that and teamwork. And when your partner, your husband or your wife recognizes that you are willing, you're not here to blame, you're here to solve the problem. You both know what the problem is. You both are experiencing that. So you're here to solve the problem. And so focusing on problem solving is a very healthy way to go about these difficult conversations. And that's why I say make difficult conversations easy, right? Now, I should really say simple, because it may not be as easy as it sounds, but it's simple. It's simple. But I find that easy takes time, and you can get to that point eventually. You also want to be able in this stage of focusing on problem solving. You want to come to a place where you're kind of negotiate. We would say compromise. You want to negotiate an outcome that both of you can live with. Both of you feel satisfied. You feel heard. You feel like you both have accomplished something, and you're basically going to consider each other's needs and perspectives, because both of you have different ideas and different thoughts about how to solve the problem. And so it's best to do it as a team, right? And so teamwork, as we've heard many times, makes the dream work, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. And this could be the opportunity for you to make this dream a reality. The next thing I want to suggest is to validate your partner's feelings. Validate your husband or your wife's feelings. What do I mean by that? It means like acknowledge and understand their emotions, even if you don't agree with them. So many times what tends to happen is a person dismisses what's been said. And so you may leave that conversation and feel like you were not heard. How many times I've had a client who will come to me and say, we argue about everything. We just cannot seem to agree on anything. And many times it's because they feel as if they're not heard. I've heard that many times as well. I just feel like he doesn't listen to me. She doesn't listen to me. I feel like I'm unheard. He doesn't hear me, right? Those kind of things happen so often. And so when you are able to acknowledge by using words like, for example, I understand that you're feeling frustrated, try to use words, things that doesn't sound like you know, right? You know how they feel. No, you don't. We don't know how the other person feel. We can try to understand. And so we call those use reflective statements. Reflective statements are statements you're making to your partner to let them know you heard them and you're acknowledging what it is they are saying. You're not dismissing or minimizing their feelings. You're going to sit with it and reflectively let them know that you get it, right? You get it by the words you use. And that's what I teach that as well. When I work with couples, either in coaching or in counseling, I teach on this very thing. And in the groups that I have done, which I'm also going to be having some more of those groups, and so you can reach out and follow me so you can make sure you're aware of the groups when I have those groups virtually. I teach on this very thing about how to formulate these reflective statements. What would those statements sound like? What should they be like? Because you want to be able to let the person feel heard and not dismissed, or you're not minimizing their feelings. The next thing I think is also very important, all these are very important, is to maintain respectful communication. Maintain respectful communication. What do I mean by that? Use language use language that is respectful in nature, right? So what you're going to avoid is personal attacks. You're going to avoid insults or sarcasm or name calling. Those things are not respectful when you're trying to have difficult conversations, right? You're going to be able to make sure you're present with that person. And no matter what happens, you are responsible for your emotions and your behavior. So you're going to present with a calm tone of voice, even if you disagree. And there are ways to do that. There are techniques that are available. You can look those up on the internet if you want to. And but when I teach that, I talk about the idea of what can you do in the moment so the person feel heard, right? Feel acknowledged, but also what is respectful. It's respectful. And these are the things I would suggest very strongly, as I stated at the very beginning, having a safe emotional space. These are the things you want to put inside that. I call them the rules of engagement. So the person can, you don't leave there more hurt than you did when you went in. Okay. And the next thing I want to mention is this, is to take breaks if needed. Now, these breaks should be where both of you are aware of them. You both agreed upon what that should look like. It's not like someone just kind of automatically decide that I'm going to walk away, because that only makes matters worse. So taking breaks have to be predetermined what that is all about, why you're doing it. You're doing it on behalf of the relationship. You're doing it with the permission of the other person who agreed that for the security and the safety and the benefit of the marriage, of the relationship, let's take those breaks. What I teach in this area is the idea of what I call disengagement and re-engagement. Because what happens is one person is disengaging, but the person who disengages must be the person that re-engages and initiate the conversation and pick up where they left off. How you come back to that moment is very important, because you don't want to come back all worked up, all steaming, because that's not helpful. You want to come back very composed with the right words, the right things to say, which is what I also teach about. What are the words you want to use to re-enter a conversation so the person can actually be receptive of what it is? And what you've just taught the relationship is that when you take breaks, the relationship can trust the fact that you're going to come back, you're going to finish the conversation. How often do I have heard couples will say, the reason why they're so adamant about fighting for that moment to finish the conversation and get to some conclusion, what has happened in the past is that they feel like they have all this unfinished conversation because one person walks away and never comes back. And so they've taught the relationship, don't trust me when I walk away. I'm not going to come back. And the person decides, now, next time, I'm not going to allow, I don't want to hear, let me go for a break, because they know what that's going to happen. So they want to get it then and there. And so, which is not also helpful. So when emotions run high, right, and the conversation may become overwhelming because of the heaviness of it, you want to take a break. There's no need to rush. There's no need to try to fix everything at that one moment. The chance is you're not going to be able to. You may just want to set the tone or just be heard. You may not even want to fix anything or hear an answer. So what taking breaks does, it allows you to cool down, right? It allows you to pray and gather your thoughts. if you're a person of prayer, which I hope you are, and ask God for wisdom. And it allows you to approach a conversation with a clearer mind, right? And these are things that are going to help you to have what we call the difficult conversations. And this, I believe, will help you to have them in an easier way, a simpler way. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Which of these were more challenging for you as you listen? Which of these were most challenging for you as you listen? So I want to just go through them real quickly, and you can decide. I would love to hear from you on social media. You can DM me, send me a direct message on Instagram, or you can comment wherever you see this on social media, or you can even email me. But which of these you found most challenging and why? That's what I would love to hear from you. And that is, was it about choosing the right place, the right time and place? Was it about using I statements? Was it about practice active listening? Was it about focusing on problem solving, not blame? Or was it about validating your partner's feelings? Or was it about maintaining respectful communication? Or was it about taking breaks if needed? I'd love to hear about what those things were for you. Now, let me kind of wrap things up with this very, very important thought. The last thing I want you to think about is this. After you've gone through all of that, what I recommend and suggest is that you pray. If you're a person of prayer, I would suggest you seek the supernatural help of God to help you to tie like a bow around this conversation, because it's a sacred thing you've just done, very sacred. And so you want to treat it in a very sacred way. So if you're a person of prayer, I want to encourage you to pray. If you're able to pray together, hold hands and pray. After this conversation you had, it meant that you had a very successful conversation. It also tells me that you've entered a deeper place in your relationship. It also tells me that you have become more intimately connected, right? Because you have just experienced intimacy. You've just experienced that. So I would love to hear your thoughts. So again, you can reach out to me and let me hear what it is you've experienced as you listen to this episode, and look forward to having you follow me on social media. By the way, I have a YouTube channel. If you did not know that, I do have a YouTube channel, and I have different topics I cover there as well. So if you are in YouTube, make sure you look me up at Kingsley Grant, and the channel is called, just find my name, Kingsley Grant is the best way. You can always find me there, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. And I would really appreciate that. So my friend, thank you for listening, and God bless. Now the announcer will come and close us out.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.